And yes, you are now live streaming on YouTube. My computer tells me, well, it's not mine, it belongs to the station. And gotta do a little bit of billboard modification here. Press the right buttons. And that was done. Yeah, back on the Jetsons. George's the Sunday. Oh. Night. Old George would get a sore button-pushing finger. I don't know if we're going to be seeing those days. The Islam Show. SHOW. And let us go down and start the YouTube broadcast. Howdy out there to those tuning in on YouTube and Facebook. I am Richard Slezak. This is the Islam Show. Whoop. And can we scroll down the page? Oh, it's got that little box with it. I don't like the little box. Okay. Yeah. The Hijrah to Medina from collapse in Mecca. Yep, things were collapsing for Muhammad in Mecca. So with that, let us proceed. Now, we got attention students, learn to sail, boys and girls ages 8 to 18. Does cost money, 3 figures kind of thing, less than couple of C notes. Schedule is, July 9th through the 13th. July 16th through the 20th, because there's June 18th through the 22nd, July 23rd through the 27th, and July 30th through August 3rd. Most classes are on Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. There is no experience required, but you must be able to swim. Our head coach is U.S. certified instructor who will show you how easy it is to learn to sail. Now, this is online at stocktonsc.org. You can give them a call in the 209 at 951-5690. It's the Stockton Sailing Club at 4980 Buckley Cove Way, Stockton, California. Neat thing to do. Healthy. You know, a confidence booster. What the heck? Oh, and it's hard to build confidence. Man, oh man. Some houses, it's real hard. And it's an important thing to have for life. It's part of your key to happiness. So, oh boy. Man, oh man. Whew. So, hope you get out there sailing. Hope you're cheerful about it. Hope you're happy. You know, I'll tell you one. Yeah. So you can learn to sail. It's available. Today is the 17th, so it looks like coming up this Friday, there's wine tasting at Pixie Woods. It costs a little to get in there. Wineries from the Napa, Sonoma Valley's Carneros region and Lodi wine country. And it's an event presented by the Pixie Woods Board of Directors. And tickets available at Gary J. Long Jewelers, Sorrel Winery, Macachia Winery, and that Wine Wizards, that's easy to, that's actually got an address here, 2222 Grand Canal. So it's over there by the Hilton, right off of West March Lane. And, today was the Centro Americano second festival. And so we continue to march here. We're at 7:25 p.m. And let's go back to audition. And we're going to get started with the show now. And that requires its own little billboard. And again, today is the 17th. And Sunday Islam show. Alrighty, and we got 7:26 p.m. 3, 2, 1. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am Richard Slezak. You are webtuned to thevoiceofstockton.org and coming to you over Facebook and YouTube, also over kxvs.org. We got 7:26 p.m. here in the swinging city of Stockton, coming to you live from the John Moriarty studio. And yes, we are KXVS to be. And we welcome members and sponsors. You got us up there at thevoiceofstockton.org for sponsorship, membership. Give us a call in the 209 at 467-4455. Drop on by 231 West Bedford Road here in Stockton and become a member. And if you have any ideas for radio, bring them. You can do them here. We're not making money yet, but you can do them and build a body of work. Now, part of building what we're building is we have sponsors. We are very appreciative of them, and they are Hotel Furniture Liquidators, 1648 North Shaw Road. Nearest cross street is East Fremont. That's just east of 99. Books for your home, books for the free books box, books for your family, books for friends. The Miracle Mile Bookstore, 2210 Pacific Avenue, and Doors Book Recyclery, 2310 Pacific Avenue, here in Stockton. Custom Plastics and Signs. They do plastic fabrication. They'll fabricate you up a display. They got it's not formed materials in plastic sheets, rods, and tubes, so you could make your own plastic thing. You can get signage made there. You see these political campaigns, they make the signage, corrugated plastic, love it. Stencils, vehicle and boat graphics, T-shirts and business cards printed. They're 326 Dr. Martin Luther King Boulevard here in Stockton. That's Custom Plastics and Signs. Millennium Computer Repair in the 209-922-1879. That is Sarfraz Khan. They buy, sell, and trade computers. They can get you parts and replace them. They can do the various adjustments, software and hardware. They can adjust and make your computer operate real good. That is Millennium Computer Repair in the 209-922-1879. Habitat for Humanity, the Restore, where you can buy building supplies, accoutrements, a new stock in daily, gently used. They're at 4933 West Lane. Make it your hardware store and building supply store. 4933 West Lane here in Stockton. That's 100 yards south of March Lane. Tender Donuts. We bake fresh daily. Chanrath Sam Civ Sam at 1304 East Hammer Lane. Open 7 days a week. Leaders T-shirt and business card printing. 500 East Lodi Avenue at Garfield in Lodi to get those printing needs satisfied. There we go. Those are our sponsors. You can be one too. And we will gladly promote you as you promote us. All righty, moving over to... Oh, last night I didn't have the mics on. Tonight I do. All righty, we're back. And I'll just leave that one like that and these like this. Now it's supposed to be shifting around, but I don't know if it has so far. So let me go over here and have a little bit of playtime with the computer. Video adjust, zoom, scene, view 1, PIP. Well, view 1. What if I go to 4? Oh, that's just the camera. Oh no. Wait a minute. Maybe if I just leave it there for a while, we'll try that. Alrighties. We'll try that for a while. Hope you can bear with it. Uh-oh, losing a little bit of noise there. Be that as it may, we have it looks to be about 7:31. Oh, that's my cell phone. And I am... Boom! Missed call. Yep. Oh, wow. I'm not... Oh, I'm going to leave. I'll call him back later. Oh, boy. Well, let me check this voicemail, because I'm afraid this might be from station personnel. Oh! Okay, well, apparently they didn't even leave a... Call ended. Uh-oh, and I need to recharge my phone. All right, continuing. And I'm going to get a quick view here. We got 7:32. Okay. Okay. Did weather, announcements, XSplit, then we did audition at 7:26, audition start, and sponsors. Alrighty. And now we got 7:33. Oh my, oh, I need to speak up into these things. I can see the lines over there on the audition and they ain't too high. Ain't too up and downy. So I've read a lot of books on this stuff, and so from the Islamic traditions, Mohammed and the Islamic traditions, I'm going to... Now, okay, the Constitution of Medina required all Medinans to defend the city. Muhammad, final arbiter, and directed raiding. Then spring 623, the first raiding parties against Meccans. The break with the Jews occurred, listed in surahs. Now, it seems to me we did 7:156. Yeah, that ended, well, 7, verse 156, Surah 61, verse 6. But most importantly, what we've already read, Surah 2, verse 38. So oh, hey, okay. Oh my. Now going back through here. Traditions are not okay. Continuing. Now, here's a look at order of prophetic enlightenment, call to repentance, works of mercy, imminence of the last judgment, missions of previous prophets, punishments upon those who rejected them, the absolute divine oneness, duties of the faithful, polemics with opponents, the happenings, the vicissitudes, the organization of the community. Muhammad preached to the Hashemite clan, but with little or no avail. Muhammad found his disciples chiefly among the poor, common people of suburbs. Oh, yeah. 2, 3, 4, 5. He was accused of being a sorcerer or a impostor who spoke in rhymes, cadences, inspired by devils or demons. Master forger, repeated old stories. These were his accusers. Muhammad received fragments of it in secondary states which submerged his voluntary and conscious personality, even when those correspondents to its preoccupations. The revelations were sometimes broken off. He waited for them to resolve his difficulties, to give directives to his community from day to day, to formulate rules when these were felt to be necessary. Revelations grew less abrupt as he grew older, accustomed himself to his role as transmitter. Contact was made and broken more easily, just as in life of the mystics after great storms, there comes a more serene, more integrated period. The Hadith, okay, Muhammad and the traditionalists made sharp distinctions between Quranic inspiration and Hadith from Muhammad's own mind. Hadith were Muhammad spoke, acted, taught, commanded, made apologies, sermons, even made God speak in the first person. And stuff we've already been over. The Prophet's wives were mothers of the faithful and thus were not allowed to marry after Muhammad's death. Okay, well. All righty. I'm going to keep track of these. And start out with Mo and Islam traditions. And that to 740. And thus, going through the lecture, getting us checking all the sources. Now, this is Muhammad by Maxine Robinson. And we're going to go into Muhammad's. Arabs were world-leading fornicators. Temporary marriages were common. Religious rites sometimes included copulation. This is before Muhammad's time. Muhammad's political perspective saw out to unite all Arabia. Muhammad saw few people who thought of religious, moral, intellectual issues he tackled. Spirit inspiration took the form of vague mumbling or short staccato rhyme phrases with repeated oaths which call freely on the names of the stars, plants, and animals, all delivered in a breathless, rhythmic voice. People were impressed by that. Kahins would cover themselves with their cloaks. That's what Muhammad was. They were highly respected, appealed to, consulted as oracles and advisors in both public and private matters. Oh, but Muhammad was not a Kahin. Muhammad remained trader and merchant, good husband and father. Now, a little history beyond. Persians under Abaharwaz pushed west in 610 into Byzantine territory. Heraclius got the throne in 610. Antioch fell to the Persians in 611. On May 5th, 614, Jerusalem fell and the true cross was taken to Setaspion. 617 to 619, this is when Muhammad was in Mecca, the Persians occupied Egypt. Avars and Slavs threatened from the west. Monophysites were dominant Christian sect in Syria and Egypt. Nestorians were 30% at least of the Persians at that time. Jews in the East preferred Persians to Greeks. Heraclius studied astrology, from which he learned his empire would be devastated by peoples who practiced circumcision. And Arab prophets, Khalid ibn Sinan of the Abs, Maslama of, Muhammad saw the great upheavals and thought he had a part to play in the drama of the last days. Muhammad went to Mount Hira, he of Mecca to a cave where he prayed and God spoke loud lamentations, meditated, and seeking enlightenment. Continuing. Now, Muhammad was knowledgeable of Judaism, Christianity, Arab paganism, Zoroaster via conversations, elements of his experience. It was stuff of his thoughts, dreams, and meditation. This went together, was chopped, changed, and transposed. It reemerged with the appearance of immediate reality that was adequate proof of external activity instilled into and for Muhammad. Muhammad was a practice ascetic to free himself from the contingent and corporal self to cut ties with the external world. Muhammad attained periodic states of ecstasy, stripped of his own personality, submitted for invading mysterious force. Muhammad gained ascetic mystic skills to experience oneness, but in purer and nobler form, but not as a calmer, more definitive form that constitutes the theopathetic state. Muhammad always felt separate, even infinitely removed from God. Muhammad received ephemeral transitory signs, both auditory and visual. This was only the first step in the mystic's journey. The source of enlightenment remained questionable. Was it Gabriel, Satan, or himself? Muhammad had a forceful, well-integrated personality capable of broad, far-reaching ideas, often of intense, constructive mental activity, used his or their mystical experience as a basis for their own fresh, boldly individual philosophy. Muhammad copied his mysticism from Christian Gnostic hermits. Muhammad, says here later, went beyond the Kahins. Muhammad's mysticism was a revolt of individual conscience against the unjust pagan system around him in Arabia. Muhammad wrote coherent messages in the Quran. Earlier prophets had accepted the surrealist verbal messages of their entirety. Muhammad wrote in the language of the soothsayer, the Kahin. Arabic is conducive to the growth of spontaneous poetry. It has many words of parallel formation. Early surahs had convolutions of ideas and expressions, and assonances and repetitions induced the reader or listener to an almost hypnotic state, trance-like, suggestible, thus more receptive of the rhymes and images. Now, the early surahs, preaching and exhortation, then on to explanation and description, and mid-early refutation and argument in the middle surahs. Meccan surahs, early and middle, were imbued with pure poetry that was lofty and eloquent. Henotheism was prevalent in Arabia. It is one god above minor gods. Continuing from Mohammed by Maxine Robinson, and continuing, Islam theology emerged because of questions. Tribal religion after life was of ghosts with social order similar to the living. As intermingling of tribes and civilizations occurred driven by material trade, the individual emerges because of business activities generating wealth. Prophets arose who stipulated afterlife judgment, that wealth distributed brought judgment reward, and hoarded or concentrated judgment on afterlife was harsh. Very few rites existed in Islam. Those were drawn from Eastern Christians, done sunrise, sunset, and at night, like the Nestorians, was prayer. Salat was prayer. Dua, appeal. Pagan Arabs admired careless, arrogant, afraid of nothing, ready to sacrifice, life and goods without thought of consequences, noble, spurned lessers, avoided hard work, for life is transitory, hospitality held high, and mockers. The Muslim ideal, life is serious, moral and social goodness counts. It is okay to be afraid. Organized charity, nobility is vain. No tempestuous passions, earnestness. And Meccan surahs were writing rhymes, were adjusted, cautionary, explanatory notes were added. Revisions, starting with Muhammad, were done on Quran scripture. The voice, how, mid-Meccan, spoke into more composed, less nary breathless fashion. Statements and instructions that were the Quran became more explicit. There were Christian sects around, the Monophysites, Nestorians, and Melkites. These were marginal Christian at best. We got 750 here at the Voice of Stockton. Muhammad did become convinced that the voice speaking to him was the same God as the Jews and the Christians. And here we get into 619, Abu Talib and Khadija died. After a few months single, Muhammad married Sauda. Sauda was an immigrant to Abyssinia and became widowed while there. She was married to care for the kids. She did not satisfy Muhammad sexually. She had no influence over him, nor did she help or hinder his consolidating his position. Abu Lahab initially protected Muhammad, but withdrew, for Muhammad said, "Pagans go to hell." Muhammad got harassed, sand thrown at him. Now, in Mecca, Muslims obeyed local laws, abided in customs, and followed decree only conditionally. In Mecca, the Meccan Muslims were dedicated to the formation of a community obedient only to its own laws, a separate society complete in itself. The word mosque came from Nabatean Syriac through Egyptian and ultimately into Spanish. Center of secular and religious activities for the community. The Constitution of Medina was a composite, initial with additional later on, a compact between Muslims, pagan Arabs, Jews. Jews were to pay taxes to the mosque, fight alongside, get along with others worthy of receiving aid. Pagans were not to aid Meccans. And the rules in Medina for Muslims: help one another with debt, do not side with non-believers against believers, aid those in need, make no separate peace as an individual with enemies, make common cause with one another, especially on murders, accept blood money settlements as a group, no aid or shelter for an evildoer, punish wrongdoers amongst themselves. Now, Muhammad was an arbiter. Order was maintained only by the threat of vengeance. 3 paragraphs in the document pertained to Allah and his messenger for arbitration. To police Medina, it took all of the wits and adroitness of Muhammad and his counselors to turn moral authority into political power, also aided by circumstances and social force pressure. Now, tribes, Bedouins started joining or converting to Islam, some over dislike for the Quraysh, the Hoswt clan, and the Khazrajite clan of Auf. And here we have more. Osama bint Marwan, she was mentioned last week. Abu Afak were critics of Muhammad. There was Abu Amir, a monotheist ascetic living in Medina. And he told Muhammad that Muhammad had corrupted monotheism with false ideas. He immigrated to Mecca with 15 to 50 followers, ended up in Syria, and died around 633. Jews in Medina asked Muslims to follow the 7 commandments of the sons of Noah. This is written in the book of Adam and Eve, one of the hidden scriptures of the Jews. To practice fair dealings, to refrain from blaspheming against the name, to refrain from practicing idolatry, to refrain from immorality, to refrain from murder, refrain from theft, and eating limbs taken from living animals. Ooh, dash pretty sadistic. Medina Jews saw Muhammad as a political opponent, for they had enjoyed political power in Medina before the Hijra. The Jewish rabbis saw Muhammad as illiterate, his rantings incoherent, the Quran distorted Old Testament stories, the Quran was full of errors, Anachronisms on those stories saw Muhammad as a false prophet. In Medina, AD 623, the Ummah had no community funds. Members were occasional laborers. Now, the Mecca to Syria, caravans passed within 60 miles of Medina. First caravan raid, socially acceptable to make war, no government, tribal rules, consequences via vengeance, no bloodshed. That was in 623. January 624, first violence in a raid. Nakla was killed. Location was the Mecca Taif Road. Oh, wow. They went, oh, man, they had to go about 250 miles. The whole caravan got taken. Now, March 624, this was the Badar well raid and ambush. Now, $50,000 worth of merchandise did not come that normal route, but a 950-man Meccan force did. That force lacked central authority. Clans conflicted. Meccans lost 70 dead, 70 prisoners, and withdrew, leaving much booty. Prisoners had studied Persian and Jewish sources, asked Muhammad awkward questions, scoffed at Muhammad. Some of them got executed, even though they could have been ransomed. That was right after the Battle of Badar. Badar victory empowered Medina and Islam. Muhammad had stayed in the rear in a hut, prayed through rocks and insults at the Quraysh. No Jews went to Badar. Jews, okay, yeah. And after Badar, Muslim observance of Yom Kippur ended, as did worship towards Jerusalem. Jews let their hair flow freely. Muslims and pagan Arabs combed and parted their hair. And go into Amma bint Marwan, a poetess, was murdered right after the Battle of Badar. Amma was a Banu Khatma, no one avenged him, and the Banu Khatma to which she belonged. Umayr murdered him. He had not gone to Badar, wanted to prove service. It was the first assassination. Abu Aflak murdered in his sleep by a non-veteran of Badr. So it was another guy who didn't go to Badr but did a whack job. Banu Kanuka, goldsmith. Okay, that's where we're going to go with that. And we have Muhammad by Maxine R. until 7:58. All righty. My. And, okay, I'll leave it at that because we got to stay within the years 622 to 625, continuing to march. Getting it from different sources, pulling it together, figuring multi-sourcing is better at presenting what went on. And now we come to Muhammad and his successors. So more of this is mainly on his successors. The idols depicted sun, moon, and stars. Those rose and set. That was part of the culture Muhammad was born into. At 16, he accompanies his uncle Zobeir on caravans to Yemen, and once as a shield bearer in a battle against the Hawazan. Zobeir and Muhammad were with the Qurayshites and the Kemenites. As he aged, he was employed by different persons as a commercial agent or in factor in caravans to Syria, Yemen, and elsewhere. This is by Washington Irving. This is Muhammad and his successors. And, strange. And let's see, the Aryans. Oh my. Now, a lot of this is on this is great stuff on religion, but Kevin. Now, here's something interesting. The Quran borrows from Jewish holy scriptures and Mishun, a collection of traditions forming the oral law that had been compiled in Babylon in the 400s. The system laid down in the Quran was essentially Christian, as had been expounded upon Muhammad by Christian sectarians in Arabia, but Muhammad rejected Christ's divinity as impious, and the Trinity it was denounced. Worshipping saints or having paintings of them was condemned as idolatrous. That came from the Nestorians. The Nestorians didn't put up the cross either. And continuing to march, oh wow, yeah, this is again 622 pilgrimage month on Al-Aqaba Hill north of Mecca, preached to Yathrib Medina pilgrims. Yes, we know about that. And we have 803 here at thevoiceofstockton.org. I am Richard Slezak. We're going over the years 622 to 624 on Muhammad. And I think I'm going to just kind of leave this behind. Mo and his successors. And that's to 803. But very good on explaining the religion aspect of what came to Muhammad. So now let us go to The Age of Faith by Will Durant. Although it's only a couple of pages, he spends on those 2 year that 2 year period. It's a great book. It came out in 1950. So this is a 12-volume set. And it's a great, she was a great historian. It's a great set of books. Now, getting back to where we left off, we're in Medina now. Muhammad's in Medina. He's got three major Jewish tribes and some secondary ones, four major Arab tribes and secondary ones among there. The Arabs at that point some were converting, some were staying pagan. It was majority minority. There was no majority there. So of any particular faith, it was like 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. But he was given chief arbiter over all the tribes. So the Jews of Medina no longer liked his warlike faith, which had once seemed so flatteringly kindred to their own. Laughed at Muhammad's interpretations of Scripture, claims to be the Messiah promised by their prophets. They laughed at it, retaliated with revelations in which Allah charged the Jews with corrupting Scriptures. We've encountered those. Killing the prophets, which they tried to do with Jesus, and some of the prophets weren't too popular. Among the Jews, they would turn against, not all, and rejecting the Messiah. But did Muhammad as well? Originally had made Jerusalem the Qibla, although others say he just did that late, around 620 or later. It's not too clear. But in 624, he changed this to Mecca. That was right after the Battle of Badr. Jews accused him of returning to idolatry. Now, a Muslim girl visited the market of Banu Kanuka Jews in Medina. As she sat in the goldsmith's shop, a mischievous Jew pinned her skirt behind her to her upper dress. When she arose, she cried out in shame at her exposure. A Muslim slew the offending Jew, whose brothers then slew the Muslim. Muhammad marshaled his followers, blockaded the Banu Kanuka Jews in their quarter for 15 days, accepted their surrender, and bade them, 700 of them, in number, depart from Medina and leave all their possessions behind. Okay. Then came the Battle of Ohad in 625. So I'm just going to leave it at that. Well, anyways, 15 women, including Abu Sufyan's wives, accompanied the army and stirred it to fervor with wild songs of sorrow and revenge. Muhammad could muster only 1,000 warriors. The Muslims were routed. Muhammad fought bravely, received many wounds, was carried half unconscious from the field. Okay, this is Ohad, and so this is a later battle that I don't want to go into at this point. We're getting a bit too far afield. Okay, the Age of Faith, page 169, and we're looking at 808. Now, one of my, a source heavy with information on this is Karen Armstrong's Muhammad, a Prophet for Our Time. And we're going to get right on into it. There's about 20-some pages I'll share with you. Testing, 1, 2, 3, testing. And now, boy, this has a lot in it. Now, we're back at the cave. It's September 622. Abu Bakr and Muhammad climbed out of the cave, taking care not to disturb the rock dove and mounted the 2 camels that Abu Bakr had prepared for their journey. Muhammad called his camel Kaswa, and she remained his favorite mount for the rest of his life. It was a dangerous trip. Muhammad did not enjoy anybody's protection, so their guide took them on a circuitous route. They zigzagged back and forth to throw off pursuers. The Muslims were anxiously awaiting his arrival in Medina. Several of the immigrants from Mecca were living in Quba, the southernmost point of the oasis, and every day after morning prayer, they used to climb the volcanic rocks and scan the barren terrain outside the settlement. September 4th, 622, one of the Jews spotted a cloud of dust on the horizon and called out to the Ansar, "Sons of Qayla, he is come, he is come." And men, women, and children surged out to meet the travelers and found them resting under a palm tree. They stayed in, Muhammad and Abu Bakr stayed in Quba, Quba, for 3 days, but the Muslims in the city were impatient to see him, so he set off to meet them and decided where he was going to live. Muhammad was anxious to remain independent of the warring groups within Medina. Kaswa fell to her knees outside the Marbad, a place for drying dates, which belonged to one of the Ansar. Muhammad got down, allowed his luggage to be carried into the nearest house, and then began to negotiate with the owner for the sale of the land. Once the price was agreed upon, all the Muslims got to work to build the Prophet's residence, which would also serve as a place for prayer. The Quraysh were not used to manual labor, and the stylish Uthman found the work particularly grueling. The first Muslim building was not imposing, but it became the model for all future mosques. It's a place of prostration, an open space roomy enough for the entire community to perform the salat together, and it expressed the austerity of the early Islamic ideal. The roof was supported by tree trunks. There was no elaborate pulpit. Muhammad stood on a simple stool to address the congregation. Muhammad and his wives lived in little huts round the edge of the big courtyard in front of the mosque. This was a place for public and political meetings. The poor of Medina were also invited to congregate there for alms, food, and care. This is the ideal of the Tawheed. Muhammad wanted to show that the sexual, the sacred, the domestic could and indeed must be integrated. Similarly, politics, welfare, and the ordering of social life must be brought into the ambit of holiness. Muhammad was tacitly proclaiming that there must be no distinction between public and private life, and no discrimination between the sexes. And that was done in housing his wives within a stone's throw of the mosque. Holiness in Islam was inclusive rather than exclusive. Jews and Christians could worship in the mosque because they too were part of God's family. Building was completed April 623. The northern wall of stone marked the Qibla, the direction of prayer, orienting the people towards Jerusalem. At first there was no official summons to Salat, but this was obviously unsatisfactory, for everybody came at different times. A man clad in a green cloak had told him that somebody with a loud, resonant voice should announce the service, crying, "Allahu Akbar, God is greater," as a reminder of a Muslim's first priority. Bilal, the former Abyssinian slave with the big voice, was the obvious choice. Every morning he climbed to the top of the tallest house in the vicinity of the mosque and sat on the rooftop waiting for dawn. Then he would stretch out his arms and before beginning the call would pray, "O God, I praise thee and ask thy help for Quraysh that they may accept thy religion." When Muhammad learned that many of the immigrants were deeply homesick, he prayed, "Lord, make us love this town as much as you made us love Mecca, and even more so." The immense uprooting of the Hijrah meant that even though they still used the old tribal terminology, the Muslims had to create an entirely different type of community. One of the first things Muhammad did was set up a system of brothering whereby each Meccan was assigned an Ansar brother. Political separation of immigrants and helpers was soon dropped. First of the 12 Ansari overseers died. Muhammad simply took over his position. Muslims were gradually creating a neo-tribe, which interpreted the old kinship relationships differently. They were distinct from the Muslims who had remained behind in Mecca, even though they had all belonged to the same blood group. Whatever their tribe or clan, Muslims must never fight one another. Immigrants and helpers must become as solidly united as any conventional tribe. The Ummah was one community to the exclusion of all men and would make confederates of non-Muslim allies in the usual way. As chieftain of the Ummah, Muhammad could now implement his moral and social reforms in a way that had been impossible in Mecca. His goal was to create a society of Halim, those who kept the faith. Mu'min were not simply believers. Got 817 here at the Voice of Stockton. Expressed in practical actions, they must pray, share their wealth, and in matters that concern the community, consult among themselves to preserve the unity of the Ummah. They could defend themselves if attacked. They must always be prepared to forgive an injury. For vengeful retaliation, the cardinal duty of the Maruwa could be a great evil. Hence, whoever pardons his foe and makes peace, his reward rests with God. If one is patient in adversity and forgives, this, behold, is indeed something to set one's heart upon. Jahiliyyah still lurked in Muslims' heart. And there was one of the pagan Arabs was furious. Clearly Islam was making them soft and feeble. He ordered a young Jewish man to sit near the group and recite poems that reminded them of their old bitter feuds. It was not long before the ingrained tribal chauvinism flared up. That's a 415. That's inciting. It is. It's contrary to the penal code. Let me adjust the camera here. And as a result, Muslims were at one another's throat. Muhammad hurried to the scene. When God has guided you, honored you, and cut off thereby the bond of Jahiliyyah from you, delivered you from the state of defiant ingratitude, kufr, and made you friends of each other, deeply ashamed, the Ansar wept and embraced. Not all the Muslims of Medina were committed to change. Some embraced Islam for material gain. Others were sitting on the fence waiting to see how the new venture would turn out. They were waivers or hypocrites, munafiqun, because they were not sincere and kept changing their minds. They would cry, "We believe as you believe," and amongst devout Muslims, but in the company of other doubters, they assured them, "Verily, we are with you. We were only mocking." Their leader, Ibn Ubay, he became a Muslim but remained resentful and critical. Muhammad was respectful to him, even allowed him to address the community during Friday prayers. And some of the Jews were becoming hostile to the newcomers. Muhammad didn't expect them to convert to Islam. Their position had deteriorated, for Muhammad had succeeded in uniting the Aus and the Khazraj. Three of the larger Jewish tribes thought it wiser to support Ibn Ubay and the pagan Arabs in the oasis who remained opposed to Muhammad. The early Muslim historians tell us that they mounted a scholarly polemic against the theology of the Quran. And this was probably reflected in the Jewish-Muslim debate during the 8th and 9th centuries. The Jews of the 7th century Medina only had limited knowledge of the Torah and the Talmud, were not strictly observant, and most were used to seeing their faith as a variant of Arabian religion. It wasn't a strange idea of an Arabian prophet. Ibn Sayyad, who, like Muhammad, wrapped himself in a cloak, he was one of theirs, recited verses, and claimed to be the apostle of God. There weren't learned rabbinical debates. The Muslims probably encountered a good deal of populist religious chauvinism in Medina. Ibn Ishaq, Muhammad's biography. Some of the Jews would go to the mosque and laugh and scoff at the Quran. Many Jews were friendly, and Muhammad probably learned a great deal from them. He didn't like the idea of Muhammad didn't like the idea of an exclusive religion, of chosen people. The conviction of Jews or Christians could only go to paradise. He remained convinced that these peculiar notions were the heretical deviations of a deluded minority. The Quran reminded Muslims that many people of the book were upright people. A revealed din. So they must not take part in these pointless squabbles if the people of the book attack their faith. Muslims must behave with hilim and courteously reply, "God knows best what you are doing." Muhammad, like the Hanifs, decided to return to the religion of Abraham, who was neither Jew nor Christian, because he lived before the Torah of the Gospel. Muhammad Hanifiyah simply meant total submission to God. This had been the original unadulterated message of the prophets before it had been corrupted by sectarian chauvinism. Muhammad claimed that Abraham was one who surrendered to himself, a man of pure faith, that is, Hanif. Oh. Now, here it is, Abraham and Ishmael, the Hashemite claim that they built the Kaaba. They had not developed an exclusive theology. Gave their lives entirely to Allah. O our sustainer, they prayed, make us surrender ourselves unto thee and show us our ways of worship. Because the Muslims had been driven out of Mecca because of religious intolerance, they must avoid all exclusivity. Muslims merely said, behold, my prayer and all my acts of worship and my living and my dying are for God alone, the sustainer of all the worlds. It was idolatry to take pride in belonging to a particular religious tradition rather than concentrating upon Allah himself. Now, towards the end of January 624, Muhammad received revelations while he was leading the Friday prayer, made the congregation turn around and pray in the direction of Mecca instead of Jerusalem. We have seen thee, O Prophet of... Okay, that's from the Quran. It was a declaration of independence. Muslims no longer feel that they were following lamely in the footsteps of the older faiths. This was mentioned in Surah 2 in the reading. Hold them not in awe, but stand in awe of me and obey me, says God. The new Qibla delighted both immigrants and helpers, and would bind them more closely together. They all loved the Kaaba. It was more deeply rooted in Arab tradition than Jerusalem. The Kaaba was in Mecca. Relations with the Quraysh had recently become more strained than ever before. Oh! Now we're looking at, made it to page 113. And this chapter's on the Hijrah. Mecca was now the center of the Muslim world. So, wanted to get further. Alrighty. But we got time limits around here. And this is Muhammad. APFOT, page, I guess oh yeah, that was 100 to, oh yeah, no, it was, 102 to 102 to 113. All righty, that's somewhat of a view of what was happening in the Hijaz and Medina and Mecca, pulling things together. And so that's we didn't get into the fact that the first raids started occurring in 623. They didn't get much. They lived pretty lean. So we'll be getting to more next week. But I'll probably get into, I need to get back to the traditions. So we'll pull it together. We'll do a book of the traditions. And then more history, and then the following surahs, because we're into the Medinan surahs, and they're lengthy, and it's a lot of governance. It's not just religion. So have a good rest of the Sunday evening. Have a good week. Thanks for listening. And for those of you who hear this on replay, thanks for listening. And Sunday evenings is when we do this show. So follow us, listen. Thanks for listening to thevoiceofstockton.org. I am Richard Slezak. And We're going to close up this show starting right now. Have a good Sunday evening. Have a good week. All righty, still here. So with that, let me close down the X. Uh-oh. I don't know what happened. Uh-oh. I think it was just a thing covering it up because I hadn't been there. So, going to shut off the one camera view of the... Oh. Have a good week, everybody. Which one am I at? Is that it? I don't know. Or is it up there? Which one is it? Is it this one? No. It must be this one. All right. Got to do the shutdown. Bam. Adios to Facebook and YouTube. Thanks for watching. Okay, XSplit. A stream recording is currently active. Are you sure you want to log out? And yes, I am sure I want to